Welcome to the Designing Music Now podcast, a podcast dedicated to the craft of creating music for video games and interactive media. I'm your host, Dale Crowley.
And I'm Chanel Summers.
Our guest today is composer Garry Schyman. Today we are very honored to have composer Garry Schyman on the show. From the spare violins of A City Beneath the Sea to the choral hosannas of Hell and a comically symphonic alien Armageddon, Garry Schyman has proven himself as one of the most impressive scoring voices in the genre of video game music with his acclaimed scores for such series as the Bioshock Trilogy, Shadows of Mordor, Dante's Inferno, and Destroy All Humans. He has conducted orchestras at sound stages from Hollywood to London's Abbey Road. A graduate of the University of Southern California, Garry Schyman began his scoring career in the 1980s as part of the composing team of renowned TV maestro Mike Post, contributing to such hit shows as Magnum P.I. and The A-Team. Schyman has since scored games such as Renaissance Retribution, Front Mission Evolved, and Dante's Inferno. Most recently, he scored Bioshock Infinite, The Bureau, XCOM Declassified, and Shadows of Mordor. Schyman's video game scores have brought him critical acclaim and industry recognition, including the Outstanding Achievement in Original Music Composition from the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences, and numerous other nominations and awards from the BAFTAs to the Game Audio Network Guild. So Garry, welcome to the program.
Good to be here, yeah. And Chanel?
You know the most impressive thing, though, being a graduate of USC. So
that's it.
Fight on, Garry. We're fellow
Trojans.
Trojans.
Though I've still never been to a football game at USC.
Oh my gosh.
I know. Embarrassing as that is. I was born without the sports gene, and I've seen doctors about it, but they can't seem to replace that gene. So.
Well, we were the Pac-12 South champions, so we did pretty well.
Yes.
Oh yes, and we're both professors at USC too.
We are. I'm an adjunct professor, or just adjunct professor, whatever.
So Garry, let's go back to the beginning and talk a little bit about how you got started in music. And I'm interested in from the very earliest days and your earliest memories of music.
Well, the story, and it has the added advantage of being true, is that when I was about 13 years old, my brother was taking a piano class, and so my mom rented a piano, and I was instantly drawn to the instrument, and I started playing it much more than my brother, and then I insisted that we continue to rent this Baldwin what was it, Baldwin? It was a Baldwin's piano, and I insisted that we continue to rent it, and I started to take lessons, and I wanted to study classical music. So literally I just fell in love with music, particularly classical music. Even though I, as a kid, did listen to pop music, I really was drawn to Beethoven and Brahms and other classical composers, Bach, of course. So that was my earliest interest in music, and it remained until before I went to USC, I went to Sonoma State, and Sonoma State University, and actually had some great music classes there. But then I literally, after a year or two, I decided I really want to make my living as a film and TV composer. Game composers wasn't an option back then. And so I was really serious, and so I decided, okay, I want to go to really the best music composition school. And so I went I finished my bachelor's degree in music composition at USC. I went there for 3 years and got excellent training. And as soon as I got out, I immediately started to seek job opportunities.
And your first jobs were as a ghost writer, right? A ghost composer with Mike Post.
Yes, actually, before I did that, I scored a television series called This Is the Life for Lutheran television.
Oh, right.
Which I still get some ASCAP royalties on, by the way. That was actually a great training. I thank the Lutheran Church for that. I'm not Lutheran, I'm Jewish, but I thank them. I think I scored 60 or 70 of those shows. They were little half-hour dramas. They were religious content, but they were really just sort of little soap opera kind of shows that required 3 to 10 minutes of music. And it was me just getting an opportunity to score a picture, and then I got the opportunity to work for Mike Post and Pete Carpenter, by the way. And Pete was very much part of that team, and got, they had 3 or 4 shows going on at any time. They were very, very successful TV composers, and they needed help because that stuff was cranked out. I mean, we'd have like a week to score a TV show. So there was like initially like 3 or 4 of us, and we'd meet over at either Mike's or Pete's home, and we'd watch the show on a video cassette, and then we'd be told where the cues start and stop. It was kind of pre-spotted, shall we say. And they go, okay, you're scoring the bad guy, you're scoring the A team. So we would kind of like pass it. We'd each get like maybe 6 or 10 minutes of music to write, and it would be Monday, and then on Friday we'd be in the studio at Universal with an orchestra recording it. So it was pretty cool training.
Garry, one question though. What's a video cassette? No, I'm just kidding.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
Ancient technology before the Romans.
So again, you have done so much, and a smorgasbord of projects. But what projects have you enjoyed working on the most?
Well, I say this a lot when I'm interviewed, but it just is really true. The most interesting music I've ever been asked to write has been for video games. So I have really, and is really accidentally, sort of serendipitously, shall we say, fell into the opportunities I've had writing music for video games like Bioshock, like Dante's Inferno, like Shadows of Mordor. Really, people are tasking me to write really interesting music, giving me fantastic resources to record it, orchestras, soloists, synths and samples, all those come into play. And so I've just really loved writing music for video games. I like playing picture, and I've scored a movie last year, but you also get to score picture very often in video games because there's usually CGI movies, in-game movies that require scoring. And so, like in Shadows of Mordor, I think I scored 50 minutes of in-game movies. So, and in the project I'm working on now, I'll probably score over an hour of in-game movies plus another hour and a half of in-game music.
What are some of your recent projects, Garry? What are things that you've been working on that you can talk about? Right,
I can't talk about what I'm doing right now. I can't, other to say than that I'm writing a lot of music for it. But I did an interesting project this summer called Io Moon. Io is moon of Jupiter, and the cool thing is it's a virtual reality game. So it was a really fun project. I think it's really interesting project. I've never worked on a virtual reality game. That said, the audio was not there was no particularly unique or unusual techniques that I used. I basically just composed loops for them. That's what they wanted, and so that's what I composed. But it was just a fun project, and it's going to come out next year. And so if you're on Oculus or Vive or whatever, it's going to be available, and I hope it does well.
Terrific.
Fantastic. And you also scored a film recently, Brush with Danger. And that was also as a result of your trip to China. Can you talk a little bit about your trip to China, what that was like, and the scoring of that film?
Actually, it's unrelated to my trip to China, but it was actually my friend, John Rosenberg, an editor who actually also teaches at USC in the cinema department, was editing it and recommended me, and so that was how that came about. I've been to China 3 times. Last time was in June, and when I was asked to speak to NetEase. NetEase is a big video game company in China, and I went and spoke to their offices in Guangzhou and Hangzhou, and find that really interesting. Hangzhou is really beautiful, actually. It's a city built around a lake, and it's one of the prettiest cities I've seen. I've been to Beijing. Beijing's just huge. It's got amazing things in it, like the Forbidden City and all kinds of stuff, and then endless buildings. Shanghai is also quite beautiful, but Hangzhou is my favorite city that I've been. It was just really a cool place. I really liked it, and met with the NetEase people and gave talks to their teams and etc. It was fun.
You also conducted an orchestra there, right?
Yes, literally 1 year ago, I was at the Beijing International Film Music Festival with Dan Carlin, also who's the head of the department, the SMP TV, Scoring for Motion Pictures and Television Department at USC. And so we were both there. He conducted a work by, I think, Georges Delerue, who he had worked with as a music editor, and then I conducted some music from Dante's Inferno. With a choir and orchestra, and it was really fun. I enjoyed it. It was cold. It was really cold. It's like New York in the middle of winter. It was freezing, but really, really, really nice. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I've spent 10 years in Asia, largely in China, and I think the very coldest winter of my or time that I've ever spent anywhere was in Harbin, China, which is north of Beijing, in December. That was freezing.
Yes, it's cold there, but we were inside mostly. I like China. Like I said, I've been there 3 times, and there's a number of potential projects that I will possibly do, but haven't scored any. Well, actually, wait. There was a movie that I wrote a song for, a Chinese movie. So that did happen. Forgot about that.
Fantastic.
Garry, are you primarily doing games now, or is it fairly balanced between games and film/television?
I would say in the last decade, more games than anything else. That would be predominantly where I've done the most interesting, cool stuff, and most of my income would have been derived from those projects.
Can you talk about your music composing process for games?
Well, it's generally and not only generally, I'm always a contracted composer. I don't work for any company in particular, so which means that I work at home. I have a studio here in my home, and computers and tons and tons of samples. Just bought some samples this morning. So I'm always buying samples and getting new ones. And so I write the music here at home. They send me material to inspire me, and also I'm working usually with an audio director, or sometimes there's a music director, someone who is specifically tasked to do music. Sometimes they compose music as well, like on Shadow of Mordor. So they will send me often if it's a CGI movie, they'll send me the movie and I'll score it. That's pretty straightforward, and it's done just as you would score any other film or television show. And then if you have the budget and it's orchestral, then you go and record the orchestra mix and then deliver that, and then they mix it in with that film. For the in-game music, they will usually send me a video capture of gameplay. So they'll play the game in the area that they want music and send that to me, and then I will use that really as something to anchor me and to give me inspiration, knowing that I'm not locked to picture in any way. But you're looking at it for, is this the right vibe and feel for this part of the game, for this mood? Is it nighttime? Is it a game that's game setting? All those things are it's really helpful to have a visual reference for all those elements as you write the music. So and then usually the audio director is designing the interactive aspects, they'll want a looping cue, or they'll want a layered cue, like 3 layers, something like that. Let's say a combat cue that can also become ambient. So there'll be full blast combat, maybe a secondary layer that's less intense, and then maybe an ambient version, which all work together, musically, and can be cross-faded easily between, so that depending on what the player does, of course, we can achieve, interactivity.
Can you go into that a little bit more in terms of your philosophy of composing adaptive music in this linear or layered style, not the nonlinear layered style? What approach do you take? Do you often start with the ambient and then add layers, just like you're working, another idea comes and you add another melody and then a counter melody and so on, and then the percussion just increases? Or how do you attack something like a combat scene?
Well, it's actually the opposite. I do the most intense, full-on combat first, and that's my basis, and then I deconstruct it. So for a less intense, let's say you still are in combat, maybe you duck away from it or something, so they want a sort of a medium intensity version, I will start to take elements out. I'll take percussion out. I will lower velocities on the samples. I will bring down volumes. I will remove maybe some brass or the more intense levels sections of the orchestra. So that is how I do that, and then I still be using the same harmonic material, same melodic material. Maybe instead of the melody being in eight horns blasting away, they'll be in strings an octave above. But if you crossfade, they crossfade, seamlessly together, because it's all the same exact material. Mm-hmm. And then I'm talking about the specific game I'm doing now, for instance. Then there'll be an ambient version, which can be actually quite different, but you want to have it work with the original material harmonically, and you want it to use the same metric, and so that and even though the tempo need not be quarter equals 140 or something, you're still going to keep that same tempo because you want it to match. You want the 2 cues, if you're crossfading to them, to match exactly. So you may have lots of bars going by without much activity. So that's really how those cues are constructed. And I teach that, when I teach at USC, it seems like, how would I create these layered cues? It's much less daunting once you realize, okay, I just write the intense version and then I deconstruct it, and it's not actually that hard to do.
So it's like you're writing linear music, but you're able to peel back the pieces to make it sound much more nonlinear.
Exactly.
It's I was just gonna say, that's kind of like the technique of vertical reorchestration, where you write like a super dense cue, and then you can kind of mute and unmute tracks, and take things away and add things back up to make it more ambient if it's like an exploratory section, and then of course more climactic based on like there's now battle or all out war. Right,
and they all work together when they're all, think of it as all having 20 faders, and when they're all set at 0 dB, they're all going, and then as you pull faders out, you get the intensity drops, but you can easily push them right back in because musically they all fit together. All these pieces fit together. So it's not once you understand, it's like a magician's trick. Once you know how he saws his assistant in half.
It's like what a recording or a mixing engineer, I should say, does in a studio, but it's all in real time. I've actually employed that technique a lot, particularly with companies that don't want to use audio middleware. And so this was a way of giving them sort of dynamic and adaptive music. without having to use middleware. So it's a great technique. I've used it a ton myself. I love it.
And do you often deliver these in stems so that they're able to remix on the fly, or do you often just send them 3 different loops that can be crossfaded, like that are all fully mixed and mastered?
It will vary. In Shadows of Mordor, I would just deliver 3 separate mixed cues that all work together. But in other games that I've done, like when I've worked for Sony, they want stems. They want as many stems as you can give them, because they'll hire you for an hour's worth of music or 80 minutes worth of music, and they'll turn that into Hamburger Helper and make 3 hours of music out of that, by taking your stems and mixing them together and doing variations on them. So it really will vary based upon what the development team has in mind and what they need and how much money they have for the composer, etc. So, but I mean, I certainly have delivered in stems. For TV these days, you are constantly delivering in stems. They want like 8 or 10 stems, so that when they mix, they can make some decisions. They can mess with your music so that their dialogue can be heard, or whatever sound effects that you may be fighting. So that's typical. But yeah, for games, I'm thinking back, like on Dante's Inferno, I was delivering like maybe 6 stems on each cue, as I recall, because they wanted some separation. Once we had the orchestra we recorded the orchestra was brass and strings were recorded in the same room at the same time. Sometimes we'll do them separately, but then the choir was recorded separately. So all those elements got delivered separately, and then percussion was also delivered separately. So they got maybe 3 or 4 different stems, and then could use them as needed.
Fantastic. So looking back on your career, is there one thing that you would have done differently that others might be able to learn from?
My whole career? Well, I think I would have invested in Microsoft in 1987.
Good answer.
No,
Good
I
answer.
wouldn't have had, and then sold it and bought Apple in 2000. I could second guess myself. I guess I think my biggest barriers have been psychological, and I've had to learn how to deal with the pressures of being a composer and dealing with clients, and that it took me a long time to realize some of the things that really can hurt you. So it's actually I'm actually speaking not from a non-technical music point of view, but more from the psychological point of view, that I had to overcome some aspects of how I felt about the stress and dealing with it. And I used to take offense, for instance, if someone didn't like a cue, and I would be defensive and try to convince them that it was really right. And I've completely come around on that. And really, it's like, if someone doesn't like something, it's like, all right, let's see what we can find. Let me take a different point of view on what's appropriate. And what I've also learned is that the client, whether it's a director or a producer in TV, film it's a director, producer in TV, audio director or music director in games, is that the in-house people have a very deep understanding of what their game or film or show needs, deeper in usually than I may have, because they've been living with it and they understand things. And so when something's not working for them, they have a reason it's not working. And very often my best cues have been ones that I've been asked to rewrite. And then something much better comes out because I have a better understanding than of what they're looking for. But that took me a while. That simple sort of It took me a long time to really come fully. And now it's like if someone doesn't like something, I may go, oh, I've got to rewrite that one, you know. But I don't argue or I just really okay. Let's find out what you need and deliver it. It's about them. It's not about me and my needs, you know. And you shouldn't stress your client. You really should never tell them if you've got 2 gigs at once and you may not have time to deliver. So you just never let your stress bleed into the relationship. They should be feeling that they're getting 100% of you, and you should be giving them 100%. And yes, you may have to work overtime or whatever, but those are some of the things that I think that are more important, the most important things, because all the technical stuff you can learn, and your composition and your composing, if you have any talent for it, will get better and better over time.
So Garry, this also sounds like great advice for up and coming composers and students as well who are studying composition too. The soft skills are always so important, and I think people don't always pay attention to them.
They don't. They think that just writing music is enough, and it's not. People want to work with people they like, and they want to work with people who are making them feel like they're going to get something. They're confident that everything's going to get delivered on time, and all those aspects. The soft skills are really, the hard skills are assumed. You have to be able to compose. You have to have the skills with the software and the ability to orchestrate. If you can't orchestrate, then you need to have a team member who has those, who you can hire an orchestrator, etc., who can fix the gaps in any gaps that you have. And you need to own the samples to be able to. You need to be able to mock up. If it is orchestral, you need to make your mock-ups sound really, really good. The expectations are extremely high these days that your samples are going to sound fantastic. And so all those hard skills are sort of assumed. It's the soft skills that sometimes I think flummox composers and need to be emphasized. Certainly to students, you're right.
Yeah, I totally agree that having resilience is something that can be learned and can be gained, and it sounds like that was something you learned over the years. Yes.
I heard somebody say that successful people have grit, and meaning that I guess that they just aren't easily dissuaded from that they may have failures. I was just reading a biography of Woody Allen. And this may sound like a slight diversion, but he started first he started writing comedy for Sid Caesar and others, but then he was convinced to become a stand-up comedy, and he literally failed for a year as a stand-up comic. He would get fired. He was terrible. Wow. And he's over that year and a half, he got better and better and more confident. But he did hundreds of stand-up comic, and that's what got him well known, because he became a well-known stand-up comic. He started to be he was on Tonight Show, and all of a sudden he got the opportunity, and they also knew him as a writer, but they asked him to write a script for film, and that's what started his career. But lots of failure that he had the grit to get past and just keep going.
Garry, you're always reading all these interesting biographies. When I last got together with Garry, he had read Frank Sinatra's biography, and I had learned a lot of things new at that time too. So, Garry, I learned so much from you. It's always so interesting talking to you, for sure. But you know what? What I want to ask you is, I know you found music and composition at an early age, but what other profession would you like to attempt?
Well, at this point?
Yeah. And like as if like, or if music and composition didn't exist, what would be, where would your interests lie? What are your other where's your other fascinations?
You know, I think writing. I think I would have maybe tried to become an author. I like writing, and I actually wrote a script at one point many years ago, a goofy script that actually had some interest. Nothing ever came of it, but I like the process of writing, and it's similar to composition, because you still are sort of have this blank page in front of you and you have to fill it with something. And so I liked telling stories, and
nice.
And so I think I might have become a writer had I not found music. I think now I have done some writing, like I've written some articles and things for various publications, mostly about music related issues, sometimes music rights related issues, which I know a lot about. And so I think it's hard work too. I mean, it is really hard work. I think I found the right profession. I really think I'm lucky, and that I found the right thing to do in life. I'm just really super lucky, because it's a tough business to make a living at, and I'm just really lucky. I consider myself really blessed, shall we say, for lack of a better word, to have found something I love and am passionate about, and then people like what I do and keep hiring me and paying me for this. So I'm just I couldn't be happier.
Well, it is tremendous what you do. So please continue to grace us with your awesomeness.
Thank you. You're
yes,
very
absolutely.
kind.
We are blessed by your music and your talent. So we've talked a lot about the importance of mock-ups and being able to create really great sounding mock-ups. Tell us a little bit about your rig and what you use to compose, especially some of the new libraries that you're interested in and so on.
Oh, well, just recently in the last 6 months upgraded. I bought the new Mac Pro, the black trash can, shall we say.
Yes.
I have 64 gigabytes of RAM in it and a 1 terabyte SSD internally. I would, if I could get 128 gigabytes of RAM in it, I would, because I've used up all that RAM and still need more. And then I bought, and so this is a really simple setup. I have this computer, and then I have this Black Magic. I'm looking at it right now. It's this dock for SSD drives, and so I have 4 Samsung 2 terabyte SSD drives they're plugged into the front, and so I have 8 gigabytes of SSD, and I have all my samples on those. Yeah, also my projects, which take up a lot of disk space as well. And so I run my samples, and I have a ton of libraries. I just bought from Spitfire Audio. I bought a Mural 1, which is their string library, and I heard some really good things about it. I did some investigating, and it seems like a really good addition, because in samples, it's like you don't just buy one string library. At least any composer I know hasn't bought just one string library. They have multiple string libraries, and you mix and you match them because each one has a quality that's important. So yes, so you mix and match. So I use, for instance, East-West library. I have LA scoring strings, which are excellent, but LA scoring strings themselves are not enough. But they're really an important part of the sound that I use. Mural, I'll see how that fits in, because I literally haven't put it into my template yet. But Project Sam has a library called Symphobia, which I use all the time. I have Cinebrass from Cinesamples. They're excellent. I have Cinewinds. I have their Woodwind library. I have I have many more. I could go on. Cineperk. I'm trying to remember all the libraries I have. So I have a ton. There's a company called Sonic Couture, and Sonic Couture has some very cool stuff, you know, including Skiddaw stones, which are some guy in 19th century London made like a big vibraphone or out of these stones. He carved them out of stones. It took him like 30 years of his life, and he lost all of his money and became poor, and just, you know, but he made this amazing instrument. There's only one, and they sampled it, which is cool. So they make some really cool stuff that I use all the time. So on and on and on. My sample, I have my template is over 600 instruments in it, in my template, and I have a lot of aleatoric samples. Because as I create music, I create aleatoric sounds that I can then use for myself, just for my projects. So that I have those. So, yeah.
What are some examples of aleatoric samples? Where can you get those?
Well, you can make them yourself.
Right.
And most of mine I have made myself. But there are, I mean, Symphonia in fact does have some aleatoric samples that are quite good, but they've been used a lot in TV shows. So I try not to use those because I feel like they've been, you know, debased by overuse. I don't own any other than Symphonia. And East West does have some effects that are included in their library, but most of mine are those that I've created myself. And by the way, people think you have to have an orchestra to create aleatoric effects. You don't. You can, one instrument can create. I have a whole library of stuff I did with like a cello and a violin, and they just did some amazing cool stuff, and then we processed them and did some interesting things with those sounds to make them, you know, really even more unique and cool sounding. So you can do stuff. You can go over. I could go to my piano right now and create samples, just by scraping and bashing and tapping, and you know. So you can. There's so. I mean, we're surrounded by sound. We can create it, and you can do very cool things on your own. But it is wonderful to have an orchestra as well to you know, make aleatoric effects or any kind of effects, you know.
Thank you for listening to the Designing Music Now podcast, a podcast dedicated to the craft of creating music for video games and interactive media. Please visit us at designingmusicnow.com for more info, news, and reviews on this subject. We would love to hear from you.